Welcome, everyone, to the third episode of Year 5 of the Bracket Report, brought to you by Delphi Bracketology. I'm your host, Brian Tonsoni. Joining me today is senior Caleb Hosier, and for the first time, sophomore, correct?
Yep.
Sophomore Landon Stevens. This episode is recorded on Tuesday, February 4th. We had a crazy weekend of upsets in college basketball, and it really made a mess out of our seed list and brackets, but we're going to try to clear that up and make sure you're as informed as possible about where your team will be when it comes time for March Madness. You can follow our work on our website, delphibracketology.com. We will have a new bracket out this evening, or Tuesday evening as you're watching this, and also on Fridays. You can follow us on Twitter, too, and ask us questions at Delphi Bracket. So, fellas, a lot of upsets this week. Caleb, which one stuck out to you as affecting the bracket the most?
Iowa State, I feel like, had a big effect since they've gone on a 3-game losing streak, even though they are not the healthiest of teams currently, as they have Milan Momcilovic.
Easy for you to say.
Probably butchered that name pretty bad. But once they're healthy, I think that it won't be as big of a problem, but they're just those losses and missing players and just not being healthy is really going to mess with us, I feel like.
Iowa State lost to Kansas State at home. They fall to our 3 seed line from being the last number 1 seed. That's a big fall, but when you lose 3 games in a row and you compare to other teams that are solid, that's going to happen. Landon, your team took it on the chin. Cal comes back, and Arkansas at Kentucky. That's the game you want to talk about. Go ahead.
Yeah, it dropped their net quite a bit. Bad loss at home. I'm still can't believe that they lost there in the conference, too. Dropped them down to the 3 seed line. Just really overall bad loss.
Kentucky's interesting. They have really good wins, but they're now accumulating some losses, and that loss to Arkansas is their first quad 2 loss. Again, drops them down to a 3 seed line because we had other teams that were comparison to them. I'm going to go with Michigan State. Michigan State will be playing on Tuesday evening. You'll see this on Wednesday. They lost at USC. Now they have to go and play UCLA on that West Coast trip. They were a 3 seed, being considered for a 2 seed. That upset at USC, I think, moves them down to the 4 seed line, and they've had an easier run in the Big Ten. Their back end of the schedule will be very, very tough for them. So if you're a Spartan fan, you need a couple wins here to stay in that top 4 protected seed line. Speaking of those top 4 seeds, we'll go over those before we break for the first time. Our first seeds, as of this morning, Auburn, Duke, Alabama, those 3 are pretty solid. And then Tennessee moves back in as they rebounded after a couple losses. Landon, that last seed line, Tennessee, you have some teams on the 2 seed line in Purdue, Florida. We've had Kentucky. How hard is it for Tennessee to hold on to that, or your thoughts on who should be the last 1 seed?
Looking at the numbers here, I don't think it'll be too difficult for them. I think they got some pretty good wins, and comparatively down to the 2 seed line and say like Florida or Purdue, I think the numbers are probably matching or even a little bit better.
Caleb, thoughts on the 1 seed line? Is Auburn, Duke, and Alabama almost a lock in your opinion, or still a lot of basketball yet to be played?
Yeah, I think those 3 are a lock, just that Tennessee and the rest are a little confusing right now.
We got Purdue and Florida, A&M Marquette on the 2 seed line. We were talking, I'm not sure there's a team right now that can move up to the 1 seed line. You had Houston and Iowa State who lost, again, part of those upsets to the Big 12, top 3 teams in the Big 12. Those are all teams that could have snuck in to that last 1 seed line. So let's move on to the 2 seed line. On our way down, we talked, fellas, about Purdue. Caleb, you're a huge Purdue fan. Purdue beats Indiana on Friday. Didn't play well, but was able to pull out a win. Are they capable of a 1 seed, or do we have them too high?
Right now, I think they got to stay at that 2 seed because I don't see what would put them above Tennessee besides maybe just their schedule, where they were a little more difficult on that instead of where Tennessee 131 for non-conference, and I feel like that is what makes me think Purdue has a shot at going over Tennessee. But right now, I think just keep those two where they are.
Purdue's playing Iowa this week. They're 6-5 in Quad 1, and they have no losses outside of Quad 1. They are really pushing to that one seed line. Landon, we moved A&M, Texas A&M, and Marquette up because of good wins, which brings me to a question. You were really good as a freshman last year in analyzing the bracket. It's the net, the number on the left, the mathematical formula versus the quality wins. When you look at Texas A&M and Marquette, they have a lot of good wins, more so than other teams. Where do you see as a bracketologist is more important, that net number or quality wins right now?
I'd have to go with the quality wins. I don't really think that the 18 net for Marquette and the 14 net for Texas A&M really matches their resume at all.
Yeah, and Texas A&M really shocked me this morning when I took a look at it before school started. They've beaten the number 8, the number 10. They've beaten Purdue, actually. Texas Tech, Purdue, Ole Miss on the road, Oklahoma on the road, Texas at home, Ohio State at home, Creighton on a neutral, Oklahoma home and away. Those are all tournament wins, games, the teams that are in our bracket. So we moved A&M in. Marquette took a loss most recently to UConn, and they play St. John's this week, so a win will keep them there. But those teams are really in doubt of whether they will stay on the 2 seed line. Moving to our 3 seed line, we have Houston, Iowa State dropping to a 3 seed line. Your Kentucky team, Landon, with the loss, and then Kansas. Kansas likely to move up. We did not discuss them in light of last night's win over Iowa State. Kansas, we did move them up from a 4 to the 3 seed line. Again, Caleb, coming back to you, wins versus net. Houston has a great net, but not a lot of wins. Iowa State and Kansas in the top 10 in the net, which are usually 1, 2, or 3 seeds. What do you think is more important to you, wins or the net?
Oh, wins for sure. Because if you look at Gonzaga, if I can find them, whatever their net is.
They're a 10 seed for us, or a 9 or 10 seed net 13.
They have a 13 net. So, yeah, that I feel like really proves that the quality of wins is so much more important than the net. They've blown out terrible teams, and that's why it's so high. And they haven't really capitalized on the good games and the quality wins.
So our club is meeting while we're recording this, and when we go back, we'll have a half an hour. Kentucky's one of those teams that they might move up because of those quality wins. I like the quality wins. When things get tight, I'm always going to move the team that has the better number of wins up. Our 4 seeds, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Missouri, Texas Tech. Texas Tech and Missouri are 2 teams on the rise. Get a chance to watch them this week if you can. But that's our top 4 protected seeds. Stay with us here on the Bracket Report as we'll take a look at each conference and who's slotted and where those teams are slotted in our bracket. That's next on the Bracket Report.
Hey there, my name is Jake Query.
And I'm Derek Schultz.
And we are part of, actually the entirety of, at least from an on-air standpoint, Query and Schultz on the ISC Sports Network. It's appropriately named. It's charitably award-winning. And Derek, now we venture into season number 5. Hard to believe.
5 of them. 5 of them. Can you believe it? 2 best buds talking Colts, Pacers, Indiana sports every Tuesday night, 7:30, ISC Sports Network, and on socials as well.
It is made possible, of course, by the people who watch and listen every single week. We are most appreciative. We look forward to season number 5.
Leaps ahead, still on his feet. Stevens lunges. Are you kidding me?
Champions of Marion County.
Unbelievable! Touchdown!
Living up to that last name. Wabash has the lead for the first time today. Said that was going to be a highlight reel. Oh, baby.
Yeah, you can celebrate after that.
Welcome back to the Bracket Report. I'm Brian Tonsoni with Caleb Hosier and Landon Stevens. We're going to look at the power conferences and the number of teams and who's moving up and who's moving down within each of the conferences. as we get 5-6 weeks away from Selection Sunday. The best conference overall right now is the SEC. They have 13 teams in our bracket. That is just an unbelievable number. I think that might settle down to 11 or 12 by the time it's done with, but no other conference has as many teams as the SEC. They have teams on every seed line except the 6 seed and the 9 seed line. They have 3 number 1 seeds and 7 teams in the top 4 protected seed range. Landon, you're a big fan of Kentucky, and they're in the SEC. What stands out for you in this conference about teams that are really tough, good teams or teams that are struggling right now?
Well, it's just a really competitive conference. I was looking at it earlier. They got 9 teams just in the top 25 rankings in the country. They got the best team in the country in Auburn. A lot of really good basketball being played.
Do you think Auburn wins that conference easily and remains the 1 seed?
Very easily.
Yeah, I think, Caleb, you mentioned last week Alabama had a incredibly tough schedule. They're already, I think, 2-0 and 3-0 in that schedule with a few more games to go. And you said that they could go 3-4 in that stretch and still be a 1 seed. You feel comfortable in Auburn and Alabama being on those 1 seed lines?
Yeah, I feel really confident with that. I feel like maybe if Bama's able to maybe lose 1 game, that put them over Duke. I mean, that could be a little crazy, but or even look at moving above Auburn.
Yeah, Alabama is over Duke in a lot of other brackets so far. We're keeping them the same at this point. I'm going to talk about Missouri in the SEC. They are 21 in the net, 15 in the new stat, wins above bubble, which puts them in that 4 or 5 seed range. They have wins over Florida, Kansas, Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, and those are quality wins, go along with an okay strength of schedule. They play this week. Any game in the SEC is going to be big. They get a couple more wins, they're going to be in the top 4 seeds for sure. Let's move to our conference of choice, Big Ten, being here locally in Indiana. We currently have 10 teams in the bracket for the Big Ten. We have a 2 seed, a 3 seed, and a 4 seed, with Illinois falling a little bit down to that 6 seed. But the top teams for us right now are Purdue, Michigan State, Wisconsin, and Illinois, which all have chances to be in that top 4. Caleb, you did a lot of research on the Big Ten. Share with our viewers what you found out about the Big Ten this week.
I feel like a team we really need to start watching at and paying attention to is Nebraska, as they've been looking as maybe one of the top 4 teams playing right now in the Big Ten, as they just be a really good Illinois team, even though they've had problems with their health. But I mean, they beat a 6 seed right there, and then they go on the road to Oregon, who has been struggling. But that's another really good win that they've got. And I want to talk about Oregon and how they've got a 3-game losing streak, 2 of which were on the road, but they're losing, and they're not even tournament teams. I think it was UCLA and Minnesota, which aren't the best of losses, but being on the road, they can get away with that, I feel like.
Oregon is falling. They're down to the top 5 seed for us, but I think we could actually maybe move them down a little bit. UCLA actually passed them up with that win because UCLA has beaten Oregon 2 times. But, Kay, what you bring up is really important for people who want to study bracketology. It's the body of work, and we all get caught up in it. When a team loses 3 or 4 in a row, you move them way down because of the recency bias, and you can't forget what they've done before that. Oregon has 8 quad 1 wins. Those aren't going away whether they lose 3 or 4 in a row. Nebraska lost 6 in a row and fell out of a lot of brackets, but they were at the 8-9 range earlier too. Body of work will be mentioned over and over again. Landon, your thoughts about any team here in the Big Ten?
I think a good team to look out for is Ohio State. They got quite a few good wins on the road. They have quite a few losses, but I don't think it's going to affect them too much. I think they can make it in.
Again, a very good point, Landon, about the number of total losses. I do think it affects the bracket. They have 9. You will see Ohio State at the back end of some of the other brackets that you should look at second after you look at ours. We have Ohio State at the back end of the 9 seed line. You go into Mackey Arena and win, that's a huge win that I really think separates you from other teams that are very, very close. So I agree with you there on Ohio State. Maryland has been another team climbing. I think a team that's in dire need of a win is Michigan. They have a game in Bloomington, which I will be at on Saturday. And as you guys mentioned, road wins really, really matter. So the SEC and the Big Ten are the top two conferences. They'll get the most teams in. And then we go to the Big 12. Right now we have 6 teams in the Big 12. They have a 2 seed and 2 4 seeds, actually a 3 and a 4, as we made a change this morning before we came here and moving Kansas up. So Iowa State, Kansas, Texas Tech, Arizona, West Virginia, and Baylor are the 6 teams that are in. Landon, as you look at the Big 12, what do you see as a team either moving up or moving down that you want to share with our viewers?
I think Texas Tech could maybe move up a little bit. I feel like they have a pretty good resume. They got a pretty good net there at the 8. Looks like they got them in the 4. I think they could maybe sneak into a 3 if they get some wins.
I think the problem with Texas Tech was they didn't have enough quality wins. They go into Houston and win without their best player who got ejected Saturday, and their coach got ejected. It was a crazy bad call by the official. And as a former high school coach, I don't necessarily agree with officials very often, and I didn't in this case. But Texas Tech was gritty and found a way to win without their top scorer. That kind of thing I think really will affect the committee. I do think Texas Tech. Caleb, your thoughts on anyone in the Big 12?
Arizona, I'm pretty sure I talked about them last week when we were here. But once again, Arizona, they've now won 4 games in a row, one being Iowa State, which they're having problems. But you don't really notice that on the spreadsheet. So they added a good win right there. And with how they started the season off, they're looking pretty good now and team to look out for if you're in the Big 12.
You know, you guys keep bringing up these good points, and I want to point them out to our viewers. It's important for us to look at the spreadsheet and look at the data, not get caught up in the team name or how good the program has been before or whatever. And that's something I think that we try to do as well as possible, is looking at the data and separating these teams as individual teams in 2025. And Arizona, Texas Tech were teams that had high nets early, but not a lot of quality wins, and now they're just banking quality wins left and right. That's why you're seeing, if you followed our work so far this year, Texas Tech and Arizona moving way up really fast in our bracket. I'll mention 3 teams are in the first 4 out that are in the Big 12, so they have 6 teams in. They could get as many as 9. Arizona State, UCF, and BYU are right there. Get a couple big wins, and they move into our bracket very easily. Now we're to a couple conferences that have been known for their basketball in the past, tradition, very good tradition and history, but struggling as of late. The ACC, we have 5 teams in with a 1 seed, a 6 seed, an 8 seed, and 2 11 seeds, with the 3 teams that are relatively safe being Duke, Louisville, and Clemson. Caleb, any thoughts there on the ACC of what people should look for?
Maybe just look at Duke and
can they move up?
Yeah, if they can move up with the teams that they're going to be playing, because I'm going to pull them up. But being in this conference this year versus last year, it's going to be a lot harder for them to stay at that 1 seed. If they lose maybe 2 games the rest of the year, I feel like that can really hurt their chances depending on what team that is that they do lose to.
I think you're right. Duke is the best team that could drop out of the 1 seed line because they don't play a tough schedule. If they take on some tough losses, I think some teams in the SEC and Big Ten could pass them up. Landon, your thoughts about the ACC?
I could see Louisville moving up. I like their resume. They got 10-6 in the quad 1 and 2. It's not too bad. Net's a little high, but they got a pretty good strength of schedule. I think they could get up.
Yeah, the strength of schedule at 26 non-conference, 28 overall. Their opportunities in the ACC, again, I think they're going to be stuck in the 5 or 6 range, but they have been a team that has been a very pleasant surprise in the ACC. I think Clemson, I like Coach Brunell. I think I've said that almost every year I've done the show here. He's one of my many favorite coaches. I'd like to see them do well. They have a pretty good resume. They're 18-4. They're on our 8 seed line, and that bothers me somewhat. But, boy, there's teams in that 5 through 8 seed line that are really jam-packed. I think they have a chance to move up. We are now going to go to the Big East. We have 4 teams in, a 1 and 3 7s. for the Big East. The 7 seeds are St. John's, Creighton, and UConn. I'll talk about St. John's later unless there's someone else wants to talk about them. Landon, Big East.
Just looking at the bracket right here, I think Creighton could be a threat to maybe move up, and maybe even you said Connecticut moving down. Maybe I think Connecticut doesn't have maybe the best wins there.
I agree. Creighton had some injury. Both those teams had injuries. So who can start winning now at the end with their full team could be looked upon better. We have all those teams on the 7. I think any of those teams can move up, and any of those teams can move down. Caleb, your thoughts about teams in the Big East?
I don't like having to look at UConn. Just they've racked up some bad losses lately. If you look on the spreadsheet, they got 3 losses outside of the first quadrant, and once again, they're one of those teams that isn't the healthiest as of now, with looking at like Iowa State. So once they get healthy, who are they missing right now?
McNeely, their 5-star freshman.
Yeah, McNeely, which once they get him, I feel like they have a shot at getting up there.
St. John's has a big week. They will play Marquette. They play UConn. They are lacking big wins. If they lose both those games, look for them to fall. If they win, they can move up to a 5 seed. We have some smaller conferences. I'm just going to mention them briefly before we break. The A-10 is likely a 1-bid league with either George Mason, VCU, or Dayton. Mountain West is likely to get 2 or 3. New Mexico, San Diego State, and Utah State are the teams most likely to make it. And then the West Coast, St. Mary's is the team to watch. They defeated Gonzaga as Gonzaga is struggling. Look for Gonzaga to see an uncharacteristically, let's try saying that, low seed at a 10. They are not as good. And the Missouri Valley, unfortunately, is looking like a 1-bid league because of Bradley's recent struggles. But coming up next on the Bracket Report, we'll discuss the bubble, and we'll share with you a few games that you should tune into this week.
Hey there, my name is Jake Query.
And I'm Derek Schultz.
And we are part of, actually the entirety of, at least from an on-air standpoint, Query and Schultz on the ISC Sports Network. It's appropriately named. It's charitably award-winning. And Derek, now we venture into season number 5. Hard to believe.
5 of them. 5 of them. Can you believe it? 2 best buds talking Colts, Pacers, Indiana sports, every Tuesday night, 7:30, ISC Sports Network, and on socials as well.
It is made possible, of course, by the people who watch and listen every single week. We are most appreciative. We look forward to season number 5.
Leaps ahead, still on his feet. Stevens lunges. Are you kidding me?
Champions of Marion County.
Unbelievable! Touchdown!
Living up to that last name. Wabash has the lead for the first time today. Said that was going to be a highlight reel. Oh, baby.
Yeah, you can celebrate after that.
Welcome back to the Bracket Report. I'm Brian Tonsoni with Caleb Hosier and Landon Stevens. You're watching the Bracket Report, Episode 3. It's now time for some bubble talk. The last 4 in and the first 4 out are always interesting, always difficult to seed. So let's get right to it. Our last 4 in, Vanderbilt, Nebraska, Wake Forest, and Xavier, and this changes almost hourly as the games are played. And our first 4 out, Pittsburgh, who lost last night at home by double digits to a mediocre Virginia team, which cost them a spot in this morning's bracket. BYU, ASU, and UCF, we talked about those in the Big 12. Landon, any thoughts about some of those teams we have just inside the cut?
I could look to see Wake Forest moving down pretty quickly. They 1-6 in the Quad 1, then they got a pretty low net. But strength of schedule is there, but I don't see them staying around for too long.
Yeah, Wake Forest and Xavier, the last 2 teams we have in, are really weak resumes, but they have a couple nice wins that put them in at the moment. Caleb, your thoughts on that bubble?
Looking at Vanderbilt right now, they maybe have the better wins, but it's going to be really tough to keep them in with their schedule that's coming up. Being in the SEC, that I'm not 100% sure, but looking at their schedule, they have maybe 8 games, maybe less, going up against ranked opponents, and a bunch of those being on the road. So them racking up that many losses might hurt what we're saying about just playing good teams. And
I think Pittsburgh that loss really is damaging because, again, in the ACC, there's not a whole lot of opportunities. And so I would look for BYU to be the team to move in our next bracket, maybe later this evening or even Friday by the time. I think they have the highest net at 33 going in to today. And Nebraska, I think, will move off of the top 4. They win a couple more games. I think they'll be a high 10 seed there. Ohio State might be moving down into that bracket. But the games matter, and there are so many good games with the mega conferences now. It's almost every night there are some quality games, as well as the mid-major games, too. If you have access to those, the conference games are really good. UAB and North Texas had a really good game last night. That came down to the wire. So, Caleb, share your games to watch this week, please.
I have Oregon and Michigan that will be on Wednesday, 6:30, because that has big implications on the Big Ten. With Michigan is tied for second with Purdue with 2 losses, so if they lose it, I feel like that might be when Purdue and Michigan State could start to run away with the Big Ten. And I don't know. Then my next game is Missouri and Tennessee, just because that is another big SEC game where Tennessee is just sitting there at that 1 seed, so this win I feel like could be really good for them. Then my last is once again another Big Ten game, which are 2 teams that are really starting to get it together. It seems like Maryland and Ohio State, which Ohio State, I want to see if they're going to keep that hot streak going, which they got really close a few days ago against Illinois, where they just didn't have it in the last 3 minutes of the game. So
all bracket impact games there that you chose. Landon, what are your 3 games?
I'm looking at St. John's versus UConn at Friday at 8 there. They're sitting right next to each other on the, what is that? Is that the
7 line?
7 line?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that could cause a shift in that whole line. Marquette versus Creighton. I think that'll just be a pretty good game to watch. 2 pretty good teams. Could maybe move Creighton up with a win, Marquette down with a loss. And then Florida with Auburn, just going to be good basketball. That's the 1 and the 6.
Yeah, no one loses in that game, right? Maybe Florida gains a little bit more with the win and gets back towards that 1 seed line talk. But you talked about the Big East with 3 teams on the 7 seed line. What happens in the Big East this week? Those teams could either move up or down because it's that close. For me, I'm going a little mid-major. VCU versus Dayton. I think VCU has a slim chance at an at-large bid. I really think that's a 1 bid league. Dayton has 2 really nice wins. So whoever wins this game is going to get a solid win to add to their resume, that if the committee is really looking to add some teams different than the mega conferences, I think the winner of this game most likely might get that consideration, even though it's a long shot. I'm going to add Texas at Vanderbilt. These are teams down in the 9-10 seed range. Vanderbilt's in our last 4 in. A win is really important for both of these teams, probably more important for Vandy. That's Saturday at 1 o'clock. And another bubble game. Pittsburgh just drops out. North Carolina is in our next 4 out. The loser of this, I never say locks or totally out, because a winning streak or a losing streak can move teams quite a bit. But whoever loses this game Saturday at 4 o'clock is probably a real long shot for having a chance to get into the tournament. As the games unfold, our rankings will change. We meet every Tuesday and Thursday. We put out a bracket Tuesday night and Friday heading into the weekend. You can find all of that at DelphiBracketology.com. Look for the seed list, which just ranks 1 through 68. The brackets tell you who the teams are matching up and where they're playing. So you can look for that on our work, as well as the photography stuff we talked about last week, and some game reports capsules. But this is going to do it for the third episode of the Bracket Report. Thanks to Greg Rakestraw and ISC Sports Network and everyone behind the scenes for helping us host the show. Again, get with us on Twitter at Delphi Brackets. I'm Brian Tonsoni for Caleb Hosier and Landon Stevens. Happy hoop watching. We'll see you next week.